Hello friends and welcome to bspsolutions.com. My name is Amit and today I am going to show you how to load data into Essbase Cube using FDMEE, and we are going to use the version 11.124, the latest release. In today's example we would be using flat file or text file as a source, and my target would be Essbase Cube. Because this is the first example, I would not perform complex transformation, rather I would focus on basic data loading stuff. So, data loading is done in 6 steps. Let's see one by one. As many of you would have already worked into Essbase data load using freeform loading or data load rule. You might find many of the options are similar to freeform loading or data load rule. So step first, we need to define what is our source, which is flat file in our case, and what is our target system. So we need to define setup, source, and target system. In step number second, we define import format. So as the name indicates, import format. In FDME, when you load data or metadata, you load into staging table followed by target application. Therefore, in import format, you define how you're going to load your source data into staging table. Okay. Then we define location, your time and period in year dimension, and scenario dimension. Define location, period, year, and scenario dimension. In third step and fourth step, we do actual mapping task. What is source and what is target? This is exactly same as you do in your load rule where you define mapping. Okay. And the fifth step, you create and execute load rule. Actually, FDME also create load rule only behind the screen. So it create and execute a load rule and to import and validate the source data. So you import into staging followed by your target application and validate the source data. So you remember in data load using load rule, we have option to validate data. The right mark appears on the top. The same thing we validate the source data. And finally we export the data into Essbase Cube. Okay. Now one important thing, as I mentioned, I like to graphically show you here once again and underline. In FDME, data and metadata loaded into your staging table. We have a set of staging table like T, data SEG. We have a staging table like SEGT and all. Okay, so there are set of staging tables followed by a target application. So if you look at the structure over here, it could be relational database, it could be flat file. Okay, from there we load into staging table and then to target application. This is done in 2 steps. So let's do hands-on and see how it works. So let's do hands-on. First I'll show you right from beginning. I log into my workspace. You can access FDME from your workspace. Okay. So workspace is your common interface. Under administration, you see data management. So this is your FDME interface, which has got 2 tabs, workflow and setup. Okay. Let's understand your target and source. Spend 2 minutes. So this is your target cube where I'm going to load data. This is my financial cube, the same we discussed in the past. So we have a common chart of account in account dimension. We have a statistical account, income account. So if you look at this, I'm going to load data to these member 4110, which is your types of revenue, which comes under total revenue, support, training and consulting. I'm loading data to these account dimension member. A second member, I'm loading data uh, to my account dimension and period. My session expired. Let me log in. So I'm going to unlock and open it again. So first is account dimension member. Second is your period, which is typically January, February, March. Okay. And third member is your year dimension, which is your year. Loading data for FY16. And then your scenario is your scenario. And then we are going to have a working version. Version is working. And we are loading data to my entity called Enterprise Global. Enterprise Global is one of my entity under total entity. And finally we have product P underscore triple zero. It's like no product. So we are not loading our income with respect to any product. And finally your data. So now you know what is your target and what is your source. This is your flat file. Now let's do the same in your FDME. So we start with system setting. I already did the system setting, therefore you do not need to do it. So the virtual machine which I shared across with you, you will find all the configuration pre-built. Okay. In system setting, this is required to be done only once. As you see in the system setting, we have profile type as file, ODA and other types are available. As my source is flat file, I would use profile type as file, and I define under which folder my application artifacts are going to store. So I define C drive FDME in which my application artifacts are going to store. We in turn get inbox, outbox and data folder. So if you are not very sure about what are these, please refer to my video number 1, FDME introduction, where I talked about all the folder details in detail. So you define system setting, you click on create application folder. When you are doing it first time, a folder will be created along with these 3 subfolders. Then you can define application setting. In order to do application setting, your application should be registered. So my Essbase cube is not registered in the list, right? So I'll first go and do source system setting, register source and target application. So my source is a flat file. You see, you need to specify only once. So flat file is already registered, therefore I need not do it. How you do that? You click on plus green symbol and you see the list of source options. Like my source could be Oracle EBS, PeopleSoft, JD Edward, simple flat file, SAP BW, or other. Any one of your source. So you can select your source and then enter name it. Okay. Well, so in this case, we need a flat file. I need not define source any further. I define target application, which is my Essbase in this case. So I click on target application summary and click on plus. There I define mapping. So my source is Essbase cube. I select Essbase from the list and select my application cube name. This is my financial cube. Okay. Select your cube, name it. I name it FinCube. Okay. And I click on save. In the bottom, you see when I define FinCube and define save, the mapping option appear. So if you look at carefully, this is your source, this is your target, right? And data column name. This refers to your staging table. So source is account, target is account, entity, source is entity, target is country type. In Essbase, we have country type dimension, we have account type dimension, we have time type dimension, right? Period goes to period, and other dimension, product, scenario, version, and year are tagged as generic type, and it would be called as UD1, UD2, 3, and 4 under data table column name. So you are done. You can save on and carry on with this. This is dimension detail, and then we define. We register source and target. This is done. Step number 2. We define import format. You remembered in the list which we see. So far we done with source and target system mapping. Step number 2, define import format. In import format, define how data will pull from source and put into staging. So I click on add and define new import format. So my source is ERP, which is your flat file. I name it as FinCube. My source is flat file and target is my source is ERP and flat file, and target is my Essbase cube. Name of Essbase cube is financial cube, which is target is your EPM actually. Okay. Type of your file is delimiter file. You see over here, delimiter is comma is a delimiter. Define comma is a delimiter. Okay. If you want to drill down, you can define drill down URL. I don't need a drill down in this example, so I make it simple. And then we define mapping type. This is one of the important part, okay, of your whole FDM design. First, your account dimension. So account dimension is 1. So I define field number is 1 and name of dimension is account dimension. Then second is your amount, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Amount is field number 8. I define amount. Then your entity. In this case, entity is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Field number 6 is my entity. I define entity. Then your product. Product is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Seventh is your field number 7 is your product. Do it little carefully so that you don't overlap members and scenario is 1, 2, 3, 4. Scenario is field number 4. So I name it scenario. And then you have next is your version, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth. Fifth is your version. And your year is 1, 2, 3. 3 is your year. Make sure nothing is overwriting. Okay. So I check 1, second is period, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. Fine. Looks good. I don't need to define any expression, so that I'm going to leave it empty. In subsequent example, I'm going to show you the expression as well. This is done. Okay. Now import format is done. I define location. In location, I'm going to define location type, click plus and define location for, I'm going to name it as L for location and financial cube. Define import format over here, the one which just now created, Essbase FinCube, and the moment I define import format, other option also inherit. Okay. So import format name are two important properties. As of now, you need to define and click on save. Okay, and then you define period. So I'm going to load data for 2016, January 2016, right? As per our source, though we have data for 2016, January, February, March. Right now, I'm loading data for January. Okay, January FI16. So I define mapping over here. We already have mapping for 2016. Let's scroll down and check. So we have data for 2016 January, right? Period key and prior period key and period name. This is what I need. So I can take a global setting or I can take an application specific setting from global setting. Select your queue, FinQube, and for what period you like to load it, select January FI16, January 16. So I see the period key is the whole date, period, prior period key is February, prior period key January, source is January, target is January, and year. Okay, period is important, target year is FI16. We save it, and you see the source month is January and target year is FI16. Then we define category. So in this example, we have three categories: actual, budget, forecast. If you want all three, you can take off them, or you can define application specific. I'm going to select my application and define I like to load only actual data, and actual goes to actual. This is a straightforward mapping, right? The member name actually is not valid. Enter the different member name. Let's check what is the member name in our application. So I browse it and I refresh metadata and see this live. Oops, there is some there's some refresh issue. I need to log off and log in, and then the issue would be resolved. So well, I define the mapping. Actual goes to actual. Okay. This is the place where last time it was failing. So I just log out and log in, and it worked. Well, so the next step is I'll move to workflow tab, the setup tab, all activities under setup tab I done. Then I go to workflow tab and define my data load mapping detail. In data load mapping detail, I'll select my location. The location is my FinCube. Okay, location FinCube, and define all the mapping detail. You see the period is January and category is actual. Okay. So you see location, period January, category actual, and source is your flat file, and target is your financial cube. Now here you define mapping. There are different types of mapping: explicit, between, like, multidimensional, and in. In this example, I make a simple mapping called one-to-one mapping, where the star represent all source goes to all target. Is a wildcard character. All source goes to all target. Okay, and define the rule name called all account. Similarly, I select entity. So it's a one-to-one mapping. Again, I say all account dimension from entity source and goes to all account into my target, and I name it called all entity. I save this. Do the same for product, straightforward one-to-one mapping, and do watch my subsequent videos for advanced options. All products, save it. Go to scenario, select scenario. All scenario goes to all scenario from source to target. Name it and save it. And last one is your sorry, we have version and year as well. Two more members. So I select source to target and I call this all version. And finally your year. All source value goes to all target value. Define all year. Right, all mapping done successfully. Data load is done. Data load mapping is done. Then I go to data load rule. Okay, and define data load rule summary. Make sure your location is correctly selected. Your period, category, source file, and target. Click on add and define your mapping. So I say it's a FinCube financial load. FinCube load. Okay. What is your category? Actual. I'm going to load for one period in this example. Okay. Define your file name. So my file I'm going to load is income net income file.txt. Right. I keep the option default. Rest of this option. Click on save. Okay. And then you can click on execute. When you click on execute, it asks you what do you like to do it under execution rule. I say I like to import data and export into my queue. For period January, it's a one period, single period, and source is your flat file. I'm going to replace the data and loading the data. Right? We have got load, append, and extract. So I'm going to store the data and click on run. So process would be started and process ID assigned. You see process ID and extract ID. So it takes a few more minutes for data load to take place. If everything is good, data load take place. If it does not, we'll debug and figure out the root cause. Okay. I continue to refresh. You can click on the status tab and look at a log file which is being rendered. Okay. Log file. Open the log file and you can see all different activities are happening. 27th of July, all activities are happening. So data load is just started. It takes some time. I continue to refresh and check. Data load is done. You see the green symbol which says data load is done. Okay, I go to back and most important, go to data load workbench and see what happened exactly. So you see this, their import done successfully. The orange fish says it's successfully, import successfully done, validation done successfully, and export done successfully. You further look at this, you find source to target mapping. Look at carefully. Source entity enterprise global map to source target entity enterprise global. Source account 424120 goes to target account 4120. Same go for year, the same for scenario and version and product. It's a one-to-one mapping. This is your data. Data got loaded successfully. In further example, I'm going to show you how to check your staging table and temporary table. Once it has got the data load done successfully, let's check into Essbase Cube. So I already created a smart view. I connect to smart view and right click to ad hoc analysis. So my session expired. We'll disconnect and connect again. And I go to the same intersection and check whether data got loaded or not. Okay. I click on ad hoc analysis and I focus on these members. So I focus on January FI16, FI16, keep only, and period I focus only on January. Then my entity is the scenario is actual scenario. Yeah, I select scenario from here as actual. Then version I select working version. And product I select no product, which is P000. right? My entity is Enterprise Global, so I double click and check my entity Enterprise Global. This is my entity. So Enterprise Global, all are defined. We go to account. Account, I would focus on all account, balance sheet, net income account, total pre-tax net income from operation, gross profit. These are my members. Okay, so I'll focus only on these members. And this is my data. You see? So finally you see the data got loaded into your cube. So this is how the data load is taken place from FDM to Essbase. This is the first example, therefore I did not show you any complex transformation. In subsequent example, I show you exactly how data travels from source file to staging table, source file to temporary table, staging table, and finally to your target. Do subscribe to my YouTube channel to access more videos, and thanks for watching today's video. Please subscribe to our to get more detail. Please log into our site www.bspsolutions.com.